Welcome to the Soccer Podcast, where soccer is a mirror for life. Today's episode is about resilience, not as a slogan, but as a lived experience. Coach Christy Monroy Bravo is someone whose journey reflects commitment, courage, and reinvention. A former Division 1 player at Rutgers, she has competed at many elite levels, navigated multiple ACL injuries, and still chosen to pursue leadership in the game. She stepped away from a successful career in project management to follow her deeper calling in soccer. She led the women's program at Washington Adventist University through a transitional period with remarkable promise and composure. She has coached at George Mason and now prepares to take on the challenge of leading Alexandria Reds women's WPSL team this summer. Her story is about more than wins or roles. It's about identity under adversity. It's about trusting intuition. It's about choosing growth even when the path becomes uncertain. Christy, welcome to the PhiloSoccer podcast.
Thank you for having me on, Daniel.
Awesome, Coach. I'm really excited for this one. Obviously, we know each other personally from our time at WAU with the college. You came in big, bright-eyed, wanting to get into the college game from a corporate job, But I want to go back to kind of where it started for you. And so, when did soccer first become, part of your identity growing up?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say probably back when I was in elementary school. I think I started playing when I was like 7. Got into the game, local rec soccer. Originally started out as a goalkeeper, if I recall, on the very first team. But we quickly transitioned out of that phase into the field player life. Played on some different travel teams growing up. Ultimately, toward the end of high school, I played on an ECNL team out of New Jersey, which is where I was born and raised. And that's kind of where it all started, was on the field in Jersey.
Love it. Yeah, no, it all starts somewhere, right? And that's kind of what this podcast is about. It's, it's about the journey, people's journey. I feel like especially in today's world, Christy, we're kind of losing that identity and that community and that, passion for where we began and how we develop, because we're becoming such an image-based culture and things are just becoming very much spectacle. So diving deep into where journeys began. So I want to touch on your college experience, because we're kind of limited for time here, and so I want to get into what did an elite college environment teach you about yourself?
Yeah, so when I first went to college, I started off at the University of Louisville. I was there for 2 seasons, and then I transferred to Rutgers, which is where I ended up playing. What ended up being 3 seasons. So college was a little bit off and on with injuries. End of my freshman year, end of spring season, right? You haven't played as a freshman. You're excited. You're getting time in the spring game, looking forward to the fall, and I tore my ACL in that last spring game of my freshman year, which was like such a bummer. I had experienced some other injuries as a youth player, but obviously that's the big one that everyone kind of is, it takes a big hit on you. So right. That process of recovering from that first ACL was really formative time for me. Mm-hmm. I think it really challenged me, because prior to that, like, my whole identity was just in soccer. Mm-hmm. And you can either continue to be rooted that way and have an extremely painful experience of going through recovery, or you can choose to evolve in your identity and start to view yourself as something bigger than that, and come to understand that you play a role that's bigger than that. In the world. So I was fortunate to have, I think particularly at that time, some friends around me who really guided me, both just in general support, in faith, in pushing me in my academics, and just being there and being in community with me, whether they were also going through injuries or just being a good friend and teammate. And they really helped me kind of grow through that time. By the end of that whole experience, I had decided, for a number of reasons, that it was just right for me to kind of change environment. And that's how I ended up going back home to Rutgers. Rutgers being kind of like my home state university. Mm-hmm. The coaches of the university were also the coaches that I played club for, so it really just felt like home. And pivoting over to Rutgers, even though I wasn't injured anymore or going through another ACL, that time was actually incredibly formative as well. Also by the nature of who was around me, whether it was friends, coaches, teammates, broader athletic administration, and then even the non-athletics related administration, some of the professors I had, some of the organizational leaders that I was a part of, and the way that they were there for me and the type of community that they fostered it really enabled me to grow a lot, not just as a player and feeling confident again in who I was as a player and as an athlete coming out of an injury, but more broadly just as a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this kind of new understanding of my identity being like layers deeper than just a soccer player, I was really able to at Rutgers like flourish in that environment because of the support that I had from adults and teammates and friends around me.
I love that. And it really is all about, you know, the obstacles that you overcome and the roller coaster ride of, yeah, it's the journey. So knowing you, I know you came in kind of as a young coach wanting to get into the college game. And first thing is professionalism. Wow. But love for soccer, right? And there's a big part of soccer that it is formative in your identity, right? But people, for example, you know, you're working at, you know, big tech company, corporate, doing college soccer on the side and, you know, impressive resume. Wow. Louisville, athletes, you know, and for employers hiring somebody like, you know, Christy, they're looking at this going, oh, athlete, motivated, you know, kind of ticks the boxes in this, but did they see the journey, right? Can you capture that on a resume, right? To help you become the person that you are today, right? And I want to talk about those formative experiences. You know, you were away from home. Home is an identity, right? It's a comfortable place, you know, parents, friends, family, but you were out of state, new place, you know. I don't know what it was like for you on the field in terms of fighting for playing time or where you were stacked up in the team. But again, players from different states, different nationalities, foreign place, injury. And then, yeah, so talk to us a little bit about that experience and then the difference maybe between that experience, how you grew in that time away from home and then coming back home, what you learned in both of those different scenarios, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I think an interesting thing about like going away and playing a college sport is it's so consuming that no matter if you, and I try to instill this in my players as well, like honestly, no matter if you're like 500 miles from home or 20 minutes from home, you are far away from your traditional home because you don't have the time and the access to just be going and hanging out at home or in the space that at one point in time felt like comfortable or safe for you. Like you're in a new environment now. It demands independence. It demands your time, really regardless of where you are location wise.
Right.
As you move, or if I think about my own experience, you know, as I thought I was an independent kid coming out of high school. I thought I didn't need to be close to home. And that it would be good for me to just be far away and I could navigate that myself because what do you know at 16? And so I think what I came to learn and what I've carried with me, not just like as I went out to Louisville, but then also when I was at Rutgers and then when I've gone on to move to different locations, work for different places, different people, different companies. It's so important, whatever environment that you're stepping into, to figure out how to establish like comfort and safety in that space, whether it's through friendships or through mentorship. You could be right next door and feel alone, or you could be on the other side of the earth and feel like so connected, just by nature of who you have around you. And like I said, when I was like, whether it was at the University of Louisville or at Rutgers, like either way, like I did have people around me who were my family and my support in my community in those moments. But I think that particularly when I was at Rutgers, and this is just like a huge applause to like both the staff that I was playing for there and then also like the athletic administration in general and the community in general, is like I felt that I had so many, I'll just call them like wiser adults around me, not just friends, but like professors, coaches, administrators, people who have lived life and experienced things, who were willing and able and excited to be there for the young people that they were responsible for, or not responsible for, but that were in their environment. Like they really took it upon themselves to be leaders, not just for me, but for others in the space as well. And I think through my time there, like that was when I really started thinking to myself that I wanted to be in in coaching, and like particularly like in college coaching, because the environment that I saw within my staff and that I experienced every day going to practice, I loved it, and it felt like family. And that's how I think the staff would have always described the environment. It was like this family environment. And you never know on a team like who has a family of 10 and who's got no family on the back door supporting them. Like, you need to be there for your players, and I always felt that people were there for me, especially in moments like when I needed it. And that was where I really started thinking, maybe one day I'd like to do this. Like, and at the time coming out of college, I thought I needed to do other things, which is why I went into like corporate career and technology. But I always had it in the back of my mind that, one day I'd like to step back into that space, because this time for me was really impactful. And I want to be able to have that impact and influence in other people's lives.
I love that. Leadership is influence, I think, nothing more, nothing less, and it's those people who, it's in those trying times that character is really shown, It's a testament to Rutgers, because there's certain institutions and other experiences where, again, I talk to all different types of people on my own experience, and I've been lucky not to have those injuries throughout my personal career, but talking to people who've navigated serious injuries like yourself, it's always about the support that they had around them that helped get them through it, right? It's about the people, it's about the relationships you build, and it is about that impact. And so how is that, what ultimately then, Coach, for you, because this is really big about identity, what would you say has been the biggest identity shift for you? I'm already getting the sense that you've become more of a relationship person, understanding that somebody being there for you and trying and testing times and not understanding necessarily your background can help shape and, like you say, form resilience and help with that. So what would you say, if you could pinpoint the biggest transition in your identity?
Like throughout my time in college, or in
through honestly your injuries, because you haven't experienced it once, it's like to overcome it and overcome it again. It's like you've had the support system. What is it that you've ultimately learned about yourself through those times that's kept you going, that's kept you persevering, that's kept you saying, hey, I'm not going to give up on this?
I think so far we've touched on ACL number one. Like, eventually out of college I'd have a second ACL injury, and then times in throughout college as well, like it wasn't always like a sunshine and rainbows. Like, I think even in my time at Rutgers, which I talk about being an amazing experience, like there were like lots of games where I didn't play at all, and I still found it to be an incredible experience, which some people probably wouldn't feel that way coming out of college sports. If they didn't play, they'd feel like a little discouraged or disappointed. But I think constantly, whether it's in recovering from an injury or facing adversity on the field or facing adversity off the field and like not playing or wanting more for yourself, like at some point in college, I think I had to stop worrying about what other people thought about me. That was definitely a big shift in like the transferring in college, was like, what are other people going to think about me? It's like, what does it matter what other people think? And eventually, it's hard actually for young people to come to that understanding themselves. And to get to that point, or to even understand that even if you are concerned about what other people think of you, they actually don't really care that much about where you're playing soccer. They probably care more about who you are as a person, or, the way that you are a friend to them, or, there's a lot of different layers to you that other people appreciate that you actually might be failing to appreciate. And through my time in college, I feel like that was the real
that's awesome,
was understanding that like it's about like what is healthy and best for myself and for my family and for my life and my trajectory, not about what other people think about it. And if I'm being honest, that's even been a complicated dialogue to have with myself in adulthood. Transition from like a corporate career to a soccer career, like I'm still always thinking like, well, what do other people think? It's like, do we is this important information for us to get caught up on right now?
Right. But honestly, I appreciate you sharing that. That is, the most authentic, part of human experience. Like, we're social animals. We're constantly comparing, but when your identity is so driven by, Christy the soccer player, Christy who's going to Rutgers, Christy, and it's kind of like there's a lot of external gratification and reward. A lot of the times we fail to look inside, right? A big part of this podcast is like the inner game. The inner game. We might be shooting to be professionals, but really it's about becoming professionals of ourselves. And what I love about your journey is you were forced into a situation where it's like, hey, who am I? Because it's that question and that self-awareness. Like when Christy's not injured, it's like, oh, or are people saying, oh, why isn't she playing at Louisville? Why isn't she playing in, at Rutgers? Is she not good enough? Is she not? And you're posing these questions from an external world that really, in the grand scheme of things, like you say, it's not what matters. What matters is when Christy's lying there on a bed in a cast, it's the people around her saying, hey, you okay? Checking in, knocking on the doors. That's where I think the reality is. And this is so important, I think, for young players to hear, because we live in such a world where Instagram reality, and now more than ever, it's modeling character and behavior, and rewarding that. And so coaches have a heavy duty, have a lot of weight on their shoulders. And again, like you said, as an adult, you're constantly comparing and contrasting, and comparison can very much be the thief of joy, right? Like, oh, why am I doing this? Who's thinking that? And so what do you aim then, coach, to teach your players based on this information that you've learned and gathered as somebody who's dealt with an identity crisis, and what have you realized, and what do you wish to impart on your players going into, let's say, this summer with the summer team at Alexandria, WPSL? That's super exciting, by the way. Let's get into that.
Yeah. So I think no matter what environment I'm coaching in, like I try to be as authentic of a coach as I can be, true to myself. I think that's when coaches are generally at their best. I think even right now, for example, I'm going through like a recovery from a knee surgery, and even just thinking back, like same thing as what you mentioned about social media and stuff, like even now as an adult, like I still look at that. I go and I look up the recovery like timelines online, and I'm looking at some other woman who's also going through it on Instagram and thinking, oh, she's a little bit further ahead than I am. And it's, we're all fighting that battle all the time.
Where does that come from? Where does that come from?
What do you mean?
Where does that come from? Is it you're a competitive person? You want to win. You wouldn't have been playing D1. But where does that come from?
Right. Like I think it's a competitive thing that, like in my case at least, like I definitely want to. Well, it's a little bit competitive lens. I feel it's also a little bit of like perfectionism. Maybe more so that, where it's like in any recovery, like you want to hit the timelines. Like I'm not one to miss the timelines here is my shtick. And that's not how recovery works. That's not how it's worked in any injury I've ever been through. But for some reason, every time I go through it, I think, oh, the situation's changed now. Simply, I must be able to hit the marks now.
So what does patience actually feel like then when you
No, patience, yeah, I think you have to come up with your own. I think patience looks different for everyone. For me, what that looks like is really focusing in on my own path. And so I always keep track of like, you work with a physical therapist through an injury, and I'll keep track of like my own, I'll program for myself like for the week. So I'll be able to see, what my lifts looked like last week. And then for me, it's just week over week. Like it's being real with myself about, okay, this was, I did 1 pound heavier on this, and just being able to kind of take a breath and not focus on the external. I'm still I'm a very systemic person. That's why I did well in corporate for a long time. Mm-hmm. Is like I'm very process driven, and so when even in recovery, like I want to see step 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to be able to see it all the way through. And I think that's how patience takes hold for me, is just being able to look that it's a process, and looking at the growth of that and transition that process over time is settling for me. Mm-hmm. Whereas others might perceive it differently, but it definitely does challenge you to deal with your frustrations about the timelines in different ways.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful hearing people's journeys, because, to quote the Rolling Stones, sometimes you get what you need instead of what you want, right? And I honestly, a lot of the time it's kind of like, if you are this, I think sometimes football is beautiful, and it can be a great teacher for what for where you need to find balance, or what you can learn about yourself. I want to talk about, you made the decision to leave a stable tech career, right, to pursue full-time coaching. What internal dialogue led you to that choice?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the time that I was in college, where I thought, maybe I'd like to do this one day. This looks like passionate, fulfilling, beautiful work, to get to do what you love every day and be around the game every day. Talk about soccer, watch soccer, coach soccer, just seemed beautiful. And I think, a lot of coaches, especially ones that'll listen to this, know like it's not always beautiful. being a coach. Like it's a grind. And yeah, I knew that right out of school, like I knew that I wanted to kind of, pay off student loans, stabilize myself, and then like set myself up for like a little bit more freedom in the future.
Right.
And so that's what I did. Around 2022 was when I got involved in my first like real coaching role, I'll say, like outside of in college I always did camps and clinics, but my first real role was at WAU as an assistant, which was it's a small NAIA school nearby my home in Maryland. And I knew that it was going to be a little bit of a stretch trying to like go to my full-time job every day and then, hit up WAU in the evening. But I love soccer. And at the time, like if I reflect on it now, like I was going to work, or I would go work out in the morning before work, and then I would spend my 8-hour day at work, and then I'd drive across the Beltway for like an hour and a half to get to WAU back home, like mid-traffic. I would coach at WAU, and then sometimes after WAU, I'd go play soccer in DC for like another 2 hours, and then I'd come home.
Committed to the grind.
Yeah, so that was actually, I think my whole life, like even in college athletics teaches you this, like you get very used to just like pushing yourself. And I was definitely in a push yourself mode at that time, much to my current niece's dismay probably. But I think that was my introduction where I was like, well, if I'm saying to myself, I'd like to do this one day, I ought to go do it. And so that's why I got into WAU. I'd spent 2 years between the assistant coach role and then a spring season at the head coach role, helping with the team. And I loved it, but I always thought to myself, man, I wish I could give more. I wish I could give more time to this, which I couldn't because I had a full-time job that I needed to devote to as well. But an opportunity came along to move into a full-time role at George Mason. And that was like a very like deep contemplative moment for me because it would have meant actually like really changing what I'm doing full-time, like my full-time source of income, the lifestyle that I'm used to. And I thought, I did think very hard about it. It was not an easy decision because I feel like we all enjoy the comforts and the regularities of life, especially if you
security.
Coach full time right from the beginning. But one benefit that I have is that I'm married to a very amazing man, and he is a special education teacher. Every time he goes to work, like I just see him do something that he loves. And I always thought when we would go to work in the morning, I'd see him go to like work and come home feeling like just completely fulfilled, like this was his calling and purpose. And I would come home from work after a good day. I really liked I liked my work. But I was like, is this what I'm called to do? Is this my purpose? I don't know. And I think that's where I would just, watching him do what he loves every day, I was like, I think I ought to go do what I love every day and see how that goes for me.
I love that.
And so occurred the transition of like leaving the full-time corporate work and going into coaching. And it was at that time that I got into club coaching as well with Alexandria. So fully stepped from the corporate world into the full-time coaching life, and haven't looked back yet.
Love it. So what did that decision ultimately teach you about purpose?
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of layers to it probably. I remember talking to my friends at my old job, my corporate job. I say friends, they're my coworkers, but I had a great community there of just people who are also my friends. I was very, like I was saying about the worry about what other people think of you, I was really kind of concerned about what other people would think. Most people like really admired the decision, and they were like, wow, that's so bold of you to go do what you love every day and just toss the structure of corporate life out the window. And I was like, that kind of gave me a little bit of a motivation. I was like, okay, like this is hard. It's okay that it feels uncomfortable to do it. That doesn't mean it's wrong. And also, I feel like in general, just with the changes that have happened in my life, whether it was like transferring schools or changing corporate jobs or even the transition of careers into coaching, like a lot of times we think these decisions are they're finite and like this is what we will have forever now. And that's just not the reality of life. Like life changes so quickly. People get married, they have kids, they move, they, have to take care of family, they lose their job. Like things happen and life.
You get injured.
You get injured and then your situation changes. So I felt really at peace after the whole decision-making process. that I felt good about the decision I was making right now. It made sense for me and it made sense for my family. And I also am like humble before the world of life and understand that maybe that won't be the case in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years. Like, because I can't predict what's going to happen in that time. But right now, does like going to pursue something that I love sound like a good idea? Yes, it does.
I love it. I'm really starting to see how formative these injuries and those testing times were for you. To go to, how do you trust your body 3 times after it's happened, you know, to go again? How do you keep pushing yourself when you get out of college to go and, you know, you've got a corporate job, you're pushing yourself to get to a college and work, you know, part-time, then you're going to play again, despite all this adversity. It's crazy. But, you know, it seems like a big part of yours, you know, it sounds like, Christy, you know, discomfort for you is, you embrace it, you know, comfort becomes a barrier to growth, it seems. And does that resonate?
Yeah, I think, even right before I made the transition to coaching full time, I had gone through the ACL and second ACL a few years earlier, and then like a meniscus injury. And so I was coming back from that right when I decided to step into coaching, and I thought, oh, it'll feel better soon. And I actually had a lot of trouble, like once I started full time, being on the field every day, just with how I was feeling and physically how like my knee was feeling. And I think that like it definitely had like a bit of an impact on like how like I think when I envisioned coaching, I also envisioned like being on the field and getting touches and like being really involved, and had maybe like a set vision for how I thought coaching was going to look for me. And then when I actually got into it, I needed to adapt the way that I was coaching and also find joy in that adaptation. How do I be more of a vocal leader? Like, how do I use diagrams more and videos more? That's been a big part of the club environment for me, is like, if I can't, for my high school kids, like get in there and demo something, like how can I really refine my language to make sure that this activity is unbelievably clear and what actions I need from the player in this moment are really clear. And that's challenged me in a new way. And it's been exciting. It's been fun. Like, I think that it has forced me to be a better coach in a lot of ways, but it definitely at times, like, it can stop you where you're like, oh, I'm just hurting. Like, I don't feel like I can do it. It's like, just because you're hurting doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means maybe we need to adapt, like, because this game is still something that I love and it's still something I'm passionate about and that I feel is incredibly purposeful work to do. So I don't want to step away just because I'm in pain, but also, like, you know, you got to take care of yourself and make sure that you're healthy enough to like sustain the job over time. So this past year, like, I just gave myself some time. I just went through another knee surgery in January, and I'm definitely giving myself the space to heal physically before I jump into the WPSL stuff in the summer, which will be like a more demanding time period. But I find that in this springtime, like the youth club environment that I'm in, my staff at Alexandria is super supportive about me needing to take a seat at times. Like, my girls understand it. Like, when coach needs to make a coaching point, we're jogging it into coach. We're all going to sit and look at the board. Like, they've really adapted well to some modifications that I've needed to make. But I think this time period, like last few months, I've been giving myself to heal from my injury has also been important in order to proceed. Like, I don't necessarily need to trudge through no matter what. It's like, okay, we're hitting a point where maybe we need a little break, and then we can attack it again.
Yeah, no, it's important to listen to your body. You know, there's a mind-body connection, and as much as you want to do it up here, no matter how much competitive you are, no matter how much you want to overcome obstacles and check that box, and, you know, there are times where, and I think it's becoming more prevalent in today's world, people are becoming more present because our attention's taken by so many things, right? There's so much information that are out there today that I think, again, coach, touching on kind of the modern coach now, right? And we're in a modern era. The game's very much changing. It's evolving. And you're somebody who's took adversity and you've said, hey, I'm going to adapt to the situation and I'm going to create visual diagrams for my players because I can't actually step in and do it, you know, which I think is a great lesson and message, by the way, for young people, and just goes to show the type of coach that you are. I have a question. So is great coaching more about control or adaptability?
Oh, I think... yeah, adaptability. I don't know if it's I think it's probably not control. Don't necessarily know all the things that make great coaching because I'm still trying to become one myself. But I think that there are a lot of ways like it's my opinion that there's a lot of ways to be a great coach. That does not look the same for everyone. My style of coaching, the way that I interact with players, the way that I coach games, like that might not be what works for someone else as a coach. And I think that there's a lot to appreciate about all the different styles of coaching. Some players will work better under others than under one than another.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's about the players. It's about making sure that their experience and that their development is prioritized, and that we are like being productive stewards of their lives in the time that we have them at training and at games. So I think great coaching can look a lot of different ways, but for me, that looks like being there for my players, challenging them to be resilient in the face of whatever it is that they're facing, to let go of the mistakes and to attack what's next. And I think I try to model that in whatever way I can, experiences of life, sharing things with the girls, but also in just the dialogues I have with them and how I'm pushing them every day.
Love it. Productive stewards. I like that. And that's, it's, coaching is influence. And today it's, there's a lot of pressure, I feel like, with young players. I know you work with a certain age range, right? You have the 18s at Alexandria Soccer Association. You have...
Currently I got the 07, 08s, which are the U19 girls. And then next year I'll be with the U16 girls. And then the past 2 summers, I did the WPSL, which is essentially mostly a college age group, but also post-college, 20s and 30s. And then this year I'll be with WPSL again.
Love it. Yeah, so it's, for me, what I've realised is I love college coaching, but I also love development coaching. I love the young ones, 8 to 12, development, planting the seeds. And there's developmental psychology, that goes into each of those different age ranges. There's different technical elements, But again, you're working with young adults, that they're on the way to maturity, into the adult world, into life, into corporate life, into, and you've took a step back now from college where there's a little bit more expectation, say, to, with grades and preparation for that. But with the WPSL team, I just want to get an idea of, like, how do you help the athletes manage pressure and expectation? And what are the expectations for you guys this season?
Yeah, so Alexandria's WPSL environment, and just in case anyone listening is not familiar with WPSL, but it's a semi-pro league in the U.S. and similar leagues would be like the USLW or the UWS league. I think those are kind of the 3 main ones that serve a summer season, mainly serving like a demographic of players who are like home from college. Like a lot of college players in their off season from May to July will compete in those semi-pro teams, but they also are open to anyone else who can make the team qualify for the team, regardless of their age. So that's a little bit different than on the, I think on the men's side, the leagues tend to run year round, like whether it's UPSL or some others, like the women's semi-pro is very concentrated in the summer. So since it's a multi-purpose league, like I think it's important as a coach to have like a multi-purpose approach to what you're trying to do. Like, I don't just want to be of service to the ASA alumni and the college kids who are super important to our program. And like, we really want to make sure that we are providing an excellent off-season training for them, but also to like the ASA alumni or non-ASA alumni who are now out of college and still want to continue playing at a high level and maybe don't have access to that high level play otherwise. Luckily, we live in the DMV, the DC area, which actually has in my opinion, a really great ecosystem for like 20 to 30-year-old women to continue playing soccer at a high level through like a number of different, like, well, I'll just maybe call like upper recreational leagues, like highly competitive recreational leagues that are quite good to compete in. But WPSL and the semi-pro environments will really provide like the most elite level, both from like providing a training environment, period, and then also a high quality training environment, and then high quality matches against other semi-professional teams in the area. So for us, for the summer, like what the model looks like is that we have both WPSL and WPSL2. WPSL2 serves maybe if we have some elite high school players who are interested, or like college freshmen, sophomores who maybe from the player pool mix won't get as much time in the WPSL bucket. but still need minutes. For mentality going into season, I explain this to the prospective players as we're talking through like recruitment and registration and such, is that like, especially if you're a college player, like your coach wants you to get game minutes. That's what I feel I learned from the college environment, is that is a priority. Like WPSL versus WPSL2, less of a priority. Like the level's okay at either, like, but if you go back to your what I'll call your primary team, if that's your college team, in August, and you haven't played any 90-minute games, not good. Like your coach's not going to be happy with that.
Right.
So we want to provide that for you. Like we understand that is a need. That's something that your coach wants for you. That's something that you need for yourself, is just simply like game fitness. So whether that's in the WPSL or the WPSL2 environment, or in like the external scrimmages that we have otherwise, we're going to make sure that you get game minutes.
To prepare, right?
Yeah, that's a really high need for that demographic of players. Like they also want to develop in that 2-month period, but 2-month period is it's a pretty short season. Like we're really going to work on just making sure that you stay at quality and refined with your technical and tactical decision making, so that you are prepared to re-enter your primary environment like in a better position than you were when you left it in April or May. And then the second piece of that, or maybe there's 2 more pieces of that. One, for anyone who's like a high school age player coming into our environment either as a training player or to help with WPSL2, that's really about experience, exposure, and starting to give young players, especially within our own club, opportunity to see what college level competition looks like and begin raising their bar to that level.
That's awesome.
We think it overlaps a little bit with in Virginia, like Northern Virginia high school season, and also finishing up elite club seasons like GA or ECNL. But it should provide those high school players like just enough sample size going into the summer to both stay fit for their next season and then to get that exposure, which is going to help them ultimately grow and then continue to push themselves when they return to their other environment.
Yeah.
And then the last piece of that is the, I'll say post-college women, but not all women's players go to college either. So it could be just a non-college player, or someone who has aged out of the youth system.
Right.
And is not currently in college. They deserve a space to play as well. And they deserve access to high quality coaching and a competitive environment. The best way to enable a competitive environment for those players is to merge it with the college off season, just in terms of volume, access to other high level players. So we also provide that. And I particularly, like I played until 2 years ago, and I played on a USLW team in the area. Not WPSL, but another semi-pro league. And I actually think that like the post-college, post-youth system players provide a type of leadership to the environment that would otherwise be missing. I referred to, like for the college players, they have a primary environment. That's their college team. This is their secondary environment. So when they're in their secondary environment, they might want to, go on vacation or take it easy. Like, I'm trying not to get hurt. This is my secondary environment. And I think that having another group of women who are, for them, this is their primary environment. This is the most elite competition that they will do on the year cycle. That's super important, because that pushes the whole group forward so that the college kids are actually getting out of it something that feels more like a primary level competition.
Right, yeah.
Not a casual competition. So they provide like a leadership and a structure and a consistency to the group that I think is actually incredibly valuable and maybe underappreciated in some semi-pro teams are really targeted just toward college players and providing that access otherwise for women who are maybe they're trying to go pro but haven't found a contract yet. Maybe they I've seen some women come into the semi-pro environment who had other careers like teaching or corporate work, and they're like, no, I want to play pro though. And they came back into the semi-pro environment to eventually leave their corporate or, professional working career to re-enter the playing space. And if it wasn't for the semi-pro teams, they wouldn't have access to do that.
Yeah, no, access is everything, And so I really appreciate that structure actually and the intentionality there, because it's kind of, you're striking the balance between what you've experienced, elite soccer, where you don't have any time in the day, and you're saying, hey, for those players, stay on top of your game. Summer is important. Summer is super important just to keep ticking over and keep the muscle memory and whatnot. But then you've got those who, like you say, are aged out of the youth system and get that opportunity as well. And maybe they're going to take it a little bit more serious, and they're the maturer players because they're a little bit, older, and they can pass on the baton of the torch. So I really like that structure because it's that balance between it. It's kind of, it's not like it's a leisurely activity, but it's semi-professional, in that sense. I think that's awesome. What are you most excited about with this project?
Well, I was with the team last year as a volunteer assistant. So I helped out head coach Scotty last year, and then I also worked with the goalkeepers a bit last summer. And
that take you back to your youth days, getting hit in the face?
A little bit. So that was a cool experience for me. But I think the energy of the group that we have at Alexandria is really, it's really nice to be a part of. But Alexandria Soccer Association more broadly, and a reason why I jumped into there to be a coach is because I have a big appreciation. I'm all about building community through the game. That's like one of my values as a coach. Alexandria really touches like every single part of the ecosystem, whether it's like recreational, the whole breadth of youth competitive levels. They do some programming in Alexandria City schools. Like they really do. They touch every part of the soccer ecosystem, which I appreciate because like Alexandria it's a community. Like we operate within the community. We play on their fields. We need to provide. I think it's nice when a club. I shouldn't say we need to provide, but a club ought to provide a positive environment for the community that they are operating within. And I think that Alexandria does a good job with that, including within the women's pro space or semi-pro space. So Alexandria does both winter programming through their women's futsal team, which I'd been a part of in the past. They finished off their youth playing with them before they went to college. Now, right. A group of players who do not know each other and have no investment in the culture of the program, the culture of, the fields that we're playing on. Right. And people who come through our WPSL program, like a lot of them have been experiencing that for years.
Yeah, no, you're in a great place. I'm really excited for your project this summer, Christy. What would you tell a young female athlete chasing elite levels in the game today?
I would say that, I touched on like building community as one of my values. The other thing I lean into is doing hard things. And continuous learning. So those are kind of the other two pillars that I lean on as a coach, and I try to instill in the young people that I work with. Doing hard things, pushing yourself, being resilient, those are critical to you being able to develop as a player. If you are comfortable operating in uncomfortable spaces with your heart rate super high and like the grind of not feeling good physically sometimes, not feeling good mentally sometimes, like if you can get yourself comfortable with that, like you're going to be in a good place for development. I think that's something I learned like super young, and that definitely influenced me for the rest of my life, was to just really love feeling uncomfortable. You're going to need to do it yourself if you're trying to achieve at a very high level.
Love it. Yeah, diamonds are formed under pressure, right? And only by being in the discomfort do you grow. I always do a wall sit, and it's funny putting pressure on the quads, whatever, with kids, and it's just a little mental resilience test. And it's kind of like, how easy are you going to give into that little voice that says, this is uncomfortable, And that's just one little example of what this is all about. But yeah, how much can you push your body and overcome adversity? Coach, how important is self-awareness in long-term development?
Massive. I think, like if I think back on my own experience, like I always share this with players like who feel pressure from parents, right? That external influence of parents or coaches at times. But I remember I used to have these conversations with my mother, and she would be like, well, you should be playing more. And, she always was a huge supporter and advocate, believed that her child was the best player always. But I think that gave me a lot of peace and like stability and a lot of ability to not just focus on my game, but then to go off and focus on leadership and voice and developing those aspects of myself a bit more, because I had what I felt was a good sense of awareness, a good receptiveness to my coaches and their feedback about what I needed to improve on, what went well that day, what didn't. It's like objectively taking that information and jot it down and move forward. That I felt was very important for my own ability to develop.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm thinking through like the lens of coach now and the players that I work with, I think that I have a responsibility to help them find that sense of self a little bit, like challenge them to ask, like, what do you feel you did well in this moment? What didn't go well? Like, do you think that could have gone better? Like, really asking themselves a sequence of questions that makes them reflect every day on their own performance, so that they can start to build that and add the objective pieces of how do I get better and how do I move forward now.
Different class. No, I love it. Yeah, but my whole slogan is here at PhiloSoccer, practice with pride. What does that break down to? Personal responsibility in developing excellence. It starts with you. The onus is on the player and the individual, right? And it starts with those reflective questions. I work with so many young players and, parents, my child's this, my child's that. And I always tell players, you keep a weary eye on yourself. And you become your own coach, right, throughout this process. So I love that, Coach. That was fantastic. Last couple here. What kind of person do you hope your players become under your leadership?
I think I want to create an environment where we value excellence in the game, and they become excellent soccer players, excellent and passionate stewards of the game as well. And making sure that within my someone operating within my purview, like, should leave feeling like they've grown and like they've been educated in an excellent way about the game. At the same time, becoming like capable human beings of the world. People who practice empathy, who are challenging, who ask questions when questions need to be asked, and then also operate well as a team, operate well as an individual, like all those really good kind of soft skills that they talk about in the corporate world. Like, I want to make sure that anyone leaving my environment, like, they're not just great at soccer, but they're also excelling and growing as a human being. And that can look really different for different players, because everyone comes into the environment having experienced different things and wanting different things for themselves. So, as a coach, I try to meet players where they're at and just make sure that they walk out that door in a better place than how they walked in it.
Love that. Love it. The way you are on the field is the way you are off it, and vice versa. The game is a great teacher. Last one. What do you want soccer to mean in your life when your career is finished?
Yeah. So, like, for me, it's about like purpose and doing fulfilling work and being of service to others. So if I think about the coaches who made like the most impact and influence in my life, like, or if I just reflect on my coaches in general, like my sense of self, my becoming of a young adult, like, had so much to do with impactful but positively influential coaches that I had in my life. I'm trying to think how to frame that back to the question, but like, for me, it's more about the players and how they come to be in the world than it is necessarily about soccer. I'm going to teach great soccer, obviously, but I know that I have a responsibility to make a positive impact on this young person's life, or on the life of the young women who are coming through my WPSL space as well. Ought to take that seriously. And I want for anyone who leaves when coach is gone and however many years, for them to just feel that the influence and the impact was positive and moved them forward, and to be able to speak to the way that it moved them forward. I think that would be my key objective.
I love it. No, I do. Coach Christy, forging resilience and identity, right? There's being and becoming, and it's all about the journey. So, yeah, guys, Christy's journey reminds us that resilience is not simply enduring hardship, but it's choosing growth through that uncertainty. Athletes often believe performance defines them, but injury, transition, and leadership, responsibility reveal something deeper. At PhiloSoccer, we believe the game is a mirror for life. It reflects how we respond to adversity. It reveals what we value. It shapes who we become. Christy's story shows that, the strongest competitors are not those who avoid setbacks, but those who learn to evolve through them. That is the real inner game. All right, so looking forward to the next episode. Coach Christy, thank you for joining me, and good luck this summer with your rehabilitation and everything in between.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks for having me on today.